Hello Kingdom Walker, welcome back to the guide to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Kingdom of God. Rather good guide here on healing services. Types of healing services. What sort of healing service should you have? Well, down the centuries, I've no doubt. I mean, things started off being pretty good, lots of healing services. That fell into a greater and greater decline. By the time you get into the Middle Ages in Europe, as far as I can trace it, there's only one healing service held once a year, and the only person that could say any healing prayer was the king. So it's got to a pretty low ebb. I mean, I think all the way down through history, though, the idea that Jesus heals was carried on in monasteries and convents across Europe down the centuries, so the idea has not been lost. But it's come back, over the last 150, 200 years. It's now become a much more popular idea. Everybody wants to have their own ways of doing it. We want to hold healing services this way, we want to hold healing services that way. Some of us want to lay on massive worship bands that make a huge amount of noise and we all get terribly excited. Other of us want to do it in complete silence. Some of us want to do it in the liturgical context of a Eucharist service. Some of us don't. We just want to have some praise and a good, exciting word and then get down and pray with some people. All sorts of different services are around the place, and I just thought that the centre of all that needs to be understood. And to get to the heart of what is a healing service, why don't we ask God? That sounds a bit facetious, but actually if you do, you come up with a rather interesting answer. Because God has laid down in the Old Testament to Moses the way in which he wants healing services to happen. And it goes a bit like that. Now just don't forget, you're talking about Moses now, it's a long, long time ago, thousands and thousands of years ago. God said to Moses, this is how I want you to do it. I want you to go out and get 2 birds. One of them, I want you to kill it. I want you to slit its throat over a bowl of water so that the blood pours out of the bird into the bowl. So now we have a bowl which is a mixture of blood and water. Then God says to Moses, what I want you to do is to go sprinkle that on the sick person. And at the same time, what I want you to do, Moses, is to sprinkle that on the live bird that you haven't killed. Then I want you to take the live bird outside and let it go. So now you have a dynamic in that story of death and yet of resurrection and flying away back into heaven, as it were. Do you see what I'm trying to get at? That is something, a picture painted of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, painted to Moses thousands of years beforehand. God has always seen the central part of any healing service to be caused by the blood and the water that comes from the cross. See what the blood has done, symbolically I have to say, what the blood has done is wiped the sin. I think I best heard this explained by an American colleague who said to me, in using police jargon, we've all got a rap sheet. The beauty is that the Christian's rap sheet's soaked with blood and God can't read it anymore, which I think is rather good. So blood has camouflaged you so that God can pour grace into you any which way, only thinking he's doing it into the body of Jesus, you see. And the water, that's the river I keep referring to. The water that came out of Jesus' wounds, that's the river. And the river of grace that flows down heaven's main street, under the tree with the leaves for healing nations, and back through his torn body, if you like, back through his wounds, into the world. It came out in a mixture of blood and water. And it comes out, I often think in times of quiet meditation that the soldier who dug his spear into Jesus' side, didn't realise what he was doing, I'm sure. What he was doing was digging a tunnel through from earth into heaven. And out flowed a river of blood and water. And it's those two things together, sprinkled on us, sprinkled on, and Jesus rises with it into a healing place in heaven. Jesus has taken all our pain, all our griefs, all our sorrows, and by his wounds we are healed. Amen.